Kia ora everyone, welcome to These Guys Got Next, our NBA basketball podcast where we dissect the NBA, deliver our takes and analysis from the bench. I'm Elijah Fa'afiu. He's Ravindu Pathirana. Ravi, how's everything on your end before we get started?
Yeah, man, I'm feeling great because we're a couple of Clippers fans. Kind of helping our case towards the playoffs. Unfortunately, as a Mavs fan, not really. How about you? How you doing?
Oh, terrible week to be a Mavs fan. Terrible month,
Mm.
actually. I'm good. Everything's good on my end. Um, Obviously, just tuning into what's been happening in the NBA, and things seem to be heating up, especially with the playoffs just around the corner. But firstly, let's talk about one team who might just sneak into the playoffs, but it's probably been a disastrous season, and that's the Dallas Mavericks. I guess when we came into the season, the high expectations we had for them coming off a NBA Finals appearance with Luka and Kyrie, they signed Klay Thompson. It looked like they had a team ready to run it back. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. Trading away Luka, getting Anthony Davis in return, he gets injured in his first game. They got the full Anthony Davis experience in that one game, and then now Kyrie Irving tears his ACL and is out for the season. Horrible news. I guess. What's your sort of thoughts on the disastrous month that's just been for Dallas?
I think as a Dallas fan, like when it rains, it pours. That's the only way to put it, man. Because they got so many guys out there. Had Daniel Gafford out, and then Derek Lively was out for the season, and Kyrie, AD, who knows when he's back? They might. There's reports saying that he might get shut down for the rest of the season, just because they're at the moment. But I guess the one guy I feel really bad for is Clay because he went over there hoping to be on greener pastures, but unfortunately wasn't the case. The Warriors are thriving with Jimmy Butler. Um, but yeah, I just feel really bad for Clay Thompson, man, because this was probably one of his last opportunities to put a stamp on his career and potentially win in that championship with the Mavs. But unfortunately, Nico Harrison had other plans, seems like it.
Yeah, I mean Harrison's win now window when he made that Luca trade, it whittled down to what a 3 4 year window to try and win a championship. They've already wasted the first year, which is a shame. And I guess that Kyrie torn ACL, it's not like I don't think even be ready for the start of next season. That's how bad I think this ACL is, which is a shame. It was great that Kyrie made those free throws after the injury. Like just like Kobe did when he suffered his
Man's
injury
had tears in his
back in the
eyes,
day.
bro. Like you could see it
Yeah,
streaming down, which is yeah, good on him.
yeah, and it is
Mm.
emotional because I mean, Kyrie's a fan favorite. Like there's his style of play. Um, People love watching Kyrie play, so I think to see him get hurt like that, and that was an ugly injury as
Mm.
well. The way his leg pretty much buckled. Um, yeah, and then I think there was a game where the injury report got so bad that they only had about 7 8 players warming up
Mm.
for one of their games this week. So it's just been terrible for over in Dallas.
Yeah, man. I think just on the Kyrie injury as well. I think he put a post up this morning saying or questioning the fact if he was bumped or and put off balance. So didn't look all that bad after rewatching it, but yeah, you could leave it up to speculation.
And right now the Mavs they've fallen to 10th in the West, so they're just on that bubble of the play-in, 2.5 games ahead of the Suns as of recording, and we know the Suns are dealing with their own issues, so the Mavs might be able to hold on here, but uh, it's going to be close, and I think we could pretty much rule them out in terms of NBA title contenders. Yeah, just awful news if you're a Dallas fan, and I wouldn't be surprised if right now fans were outside the stadium having more funerals, just like they did with the Luca trade, right? Getting more coffins out there, and everyone's in mourning. So it's a sad day to be in
Mm.
Dallas.
And just to add on to that as well, like the I think Dallas themselves are going through a bit of a dust storm that are sweeping in and just looks post-apocalyptic in a sense. So kind of, um, I guess the Dallas Mavs fans themselves are going through it, and also the city is going through it as well. So maybe Nico Harris has put these guys through the plagues like in the Bible.
Yeah, they are going through it. So I mean, sending our prayers and thoughts to all Dallas Mavericks fans right now. Let's talk about two players in the Western Conference who right now it's a two-horse race for the MVP award. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nikola Jokic. It's a big week coming up. I think by the time this episode drops, the first Thunder and Nuggets game would have been played already. But these two teams will meet each other in the space of 48
Mm.
hours, back to back, basically. And this could pretty much decide the MVP race. Jokic, it seems like every time we seem to write off Jokic in this race because SGA has an amazing point scoring feat. Jokic does something even more spectacular or something else awesome to catch up and keep himself in the race. I'll throw it to you, Rav. How do you see this MVP race right now? Who's winning? What's the margin? How do you see it right now?
Look, man, I was watching that Suns Nuggets game last night, and just at that daytime. But I just yeah, just what Jokic was able to do, and the ease of how he was able to do it. I don't know, just to me solidified the fact that he is the MVP. Like, look, he had two triple doubles in a game, like the first ever 30-20-20 game. Like, that's unbelievable. As much scoring and like steals that Shea does, just the way Jokic is able to impact the game both from a rebounding sense, and with the playmaking that he does. Um, yeah, it's just unbelievable, and I think he is the MVP. A couple of things to take into consideration, like he's also fourth in the league in steals as well, like which is pretty unreal. Like there's so many stats that he's leading in the box scores and analytics guys. It's just like it's unreal what he's been able to do. And every season, like you said, he just seems to wow everybody. Um, like yeah, you know how the everyone's complaining about the free throws for SGA. So I just went up and did a bit of a search. Like as of recording, SGA has attempted 547 free throws on his 61 games played, I think. Um, and he's made 491. So that's he's nearly averaging nine free throws attempted a game compared to Jokic, who's 278 from 340 attempted, about six a game, which is 207 less than SGA. So if we were to, I think he's averaging 80% on free throws, and he got 28, 28.8 points, and that'll bump him up to like 32, 33. So if Joker was getting the same amount of calls as SGA does, so he could be averaging more points than SGA himself. So my opinion is that yeah, Joker is my personal favorite for this MVP race.
Okay, I'm going to make the argument for
Mm,
SGA for MVP because I think Jokic with that performance last night has brought him back. Maybe not even, but he's right there now. He's put a ton of pressure on SGA. I still think SGA deserves MVP. I think his scoring this season has been key for the number one defense. We know how great of a defender he is individually, but his scoring, he's had 450-point games in the span of 40 days,
mm,
which is an insane margin to think about. Leads the league in 20-point games, 30-point games, 40-point games, 50-point games this season, averaging nearly 33 points per game. I saw a stat that because the Thunder have been dominant or have been dominating their opponents at in games this season, if you took away all the fourth quarter points that SGA has scored this season, so basically SGA scoring in the first three quarters, he would still be top five in scoring, which shows you it goes to show how dominant of a scorer he's
mm,
been. And yes, I'm talking about scoring here, but defensively we know how good SGA is. Like he could be a contender for defensive player of the year. Although when you got guys like Lou Dort and Kason Wallace, then but I guess as a as a whole, SGA is a great defensive player as well. But I think these two games back to back with the Thunder and the Nuggets is going to be key for SGA because if he can steer the Thunder to a win in both of these games, the MVP's his, and that's all he needs to do. If Jokic wins at least one of these games for the Nuggets, then I think Jokic, the arguments there that Jokic should probably win his fourth MVP,
mm.
which would be historic. Um, I'm kind of surprised that Jokic didn't already have a 30-20-20 game already. So I feel like he's done so
Mm.
much. But I guess on Jokic, like I think we're at a point now where we need to discuss him as one of the all-time greats. Or am I jumping the gun here?
No, man, I think that's a
What do you
valid
think?
point. I think yeah, he is solidifying himself as an all-time great. I think possibly another ring under his belt, would support that case and have him in the, I guess, top 10 conversations. Because that's a massive factor. Right? As we know, like rings come into play quite a lot, regardless of how much you dominate the game. So we've just got to hope that Nuggets make a deep playoff push this season and are able to compete with like some of the names, like possibly the Celtics in the Western Conference Finals, or some of the top teams in the West as well, like especially the Thunder. So this is could be a good preview of a Western Conference Finals matchup.
Yeah, it's been an exciting MVP race nonetheless between these two guys who've separated themselves from the rest of the pack. So very excited to see how this back to back goes between the Thunder and the Nuggets. Over in the Eastern Conference, the Cavs, no surprises, they're the first team to book their spot in the playoffs. 13 wins in a row as of recording. It's the third time this season they've had a streak of at least 12 wins or more, which is crazy to think about. I feel like we've spoken about the Cavs quite a bit in terms of their key guys, but one guy I do want to bring up is DeAndre Hunter, who is currently undefeated as a Cav since joining the Cavs at the trade deadline. But he's someone who's pretty much fit in seamlessly into what the Cavs already had this season.
Yeah, man. I mean, we spoke about it, right? It's just interesting move by the Hawks, just giving away Hunter because we know his capability. We spoke about a 6 man of the year campaign, and the fact that he's able to play with just an amazing side as the Cavs and being on this win streak. So they just add boosts his confidence and also at the same time adds insult to injury for the Hawks, unfortunately. But yeah, man. So looking forward to we spoke about them so much, but yeah, this Cavs team is just on a run, and I'm really hoping they get past that 14 or 13 game win streak, which they had last time around.
Yeah, I think it was 15 even.
15.
Like it was, yeah, to start the season off. But I mean, regardless of if they can pull off a streak here, to finish off the season, uh, actually, I'll put you under the pump right now. Do they reach 70 wins? They're already at I think it's 52-10 at the moment, so they'll need a couple more losses. But do they reach 70 wins?
Uh, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, why not? Why not keep this streak
Oh,
alive? I've looked at the upcoming schedule. It looks pretty relatively easier this week, but it's the NBA, anything goes. So we'll see how we go. But I'm going to stick with it. Yeah, 70 wins.
fair enough. I mean, that would put the Cavs in historic territory there. In terms of the New York Knicks, I know you roasted me last week about the Sixers, so I'm gonna slightly try and counter here. Your pick for the NBA title, the New York Knicks. Big news: Jalen Brunson's out for a couple of weeks with the right ankle sprain.
That
But
looked
I just
terrible,
want to
man. I
put
don't
to
know
you,
if you've seen
Rav.
it. Like, oh, just shiver that.
I guess anytime the ankle bends or folds that way, it's just real gruesome to watch. Just on the Lakers, because that was during the Lakers Knicks game. There was some great game planning from JJ Redick again. I don't know if he had another sleepless night or two to plan for Jalen Brunson, but he just completely smothered Brunson, and the Lakers, they're on a roll right now. But it's not about the Lakers; it's about New York. I just wanted to put it to you, Rav. The Knicks are 0-9 against the top four teams in the NBA currently. So that's the Cavs, the Thunder, the Lakers, and the Celtics. Concerned at all come playoff time that they won't be able to get over the hump and beat these teams that are above them?
Um, I'd say the concern is creeping in. Is probably the main thing right now. Um, but we'll see. We'll see how we go. I'm hoping that these guys will be able to push through and make a really deep run, and hopefully the prediction comes true about these guys winning. So yeah, but yeah, I'm hoping they can turn things around. Just got to get through this little hump without Brunson over the next couple of weeks, and then yeah, should be smooth sailing from there.
You would think with Brunson out, that means more relying on Cat, and I assume Mikal Bridges would step up as the second option, which he's used to being part of the Brooklyn Nets. But offensively, that's not where the issue is. It's defensively, and they're probably hoping that Mitch Robinson can come back and help anchor, because I've seen some pretty horrible stats surrounding Cat and his individual defense this season. So hopefully New York can turn things around, and they'll need to because there's a team right behind them in the standings. they're 3.5 games above this team, but they're pretty much on a roll right now, and that's the Milwaukee
Mm.
Bucks. They've won 4 straight as of recording. They're 8-1 since the All Star break. It seems like the moves that they made at the trade deadline quite sneaky, but they've managed to make a difference. Like we were talking about at the start of the season, how old this team was getting, how slow this team was looking, and they've brought in all these sort of younger guys to help fix that. And defensively, they're looking hell of a lot stronger than they were at the start of the season, especially with Giannis and Dame doing what they've been doing. What have you sort of made of Milwaukee?
I think that's the thing, bro. Like I never really doubted Giannis and Dame. It's just the guys around them. Like, like the biggest concern we had was the age and how these guys were impacting the game defensively. But adding guys like Kuzma and Kevin Porter Jr., unfortunately, came from the Clippers. Um, yeah, has helped this team quite a lot. Like their defensive identity is starting to come into play, which is awesome. Like they have the second best defensive rating at 107.4, and around Kyle Kuzma as well. Like we know him as a reasonable threat offensively, um, but yeah, it's just the other teams are shooting 32.5% from three when Kuzma's on the floor, and KPG is affecting the steals as well, having 1.5 steals a game. So I think yeah, it's just once they carve out this defensive identity, getting Bobby Portis back for the postseason. I think that yeah, this team is starting to poise themselves to make a really deep run.
The other thing is that Giannis himself has been battling a little bit of an injury struggle. I would know because he's been on one of my fantasy teams this year. So, um, but it seems like he's back to full health, which is a dangerous time to be back at full health if you're the rest of the NBA, because we know how good a healthy Giannis is, and Dame has been a great secondary offensive weapon this season.
Mm.
So yeah, if that supporting cast can stand up on the defensive end, you talked about a second best defensive rating rather since the All Star break
Mm.
when they made all those trades. So yeah, the Bucks, they are firing and they are coming up. So the Knicks better watch out. Rather is all I'll say there. um, moving on, look, let's talk about the Orlando Magic, who we had some high hopes for them
Mm.
at the start of the season. They've pretty much, it looks like they've fallen off the rails, especially with Jalen Suggs now officially ruled out for the season with his knee injury. I mean, we were talking about how good this team was without Paolo and Franz when they had their double oblique injury earlier in the season, and we were thinking, how the hell is this team winning? It
Mm.
turns out the answer was Jalen Suggs, who's pretty much the glue of this team. And then Suggs is out, and now they're struggling. And yeah, have you? I'm sure you've been tracking how bad the Magic have been as of lately. What have you made of this team?
I think just the impact that Suggs had, man, defensively in the locker room is we know him as a big energy and a big motor guy, right? So like losing that glue in the team kind of puts them in shambles a wee bit, which has happened. Like they've lost five straight, 9 and 21, in 2025 since the start of the year, and lost to the ethical tanking Raptors and the Bulls. Um, which is just really unfortunate because yeah, I was hoping that I think both of us had these guys in the top 4 or 5, I believe, when we made the predictions before the season
We
started.
were ready. We were ready to crown Paolo Banchero as the next
Mm,
superstar, and unfortunately, he hasn't gotten over that at all.
mm,
And France has done. I mean, France has been okay. He's been great this season, but I think the weakness of both of these guys, which is their 3-point shooting, has been clearly been evident.
mm,
Like they're 30.6% from behind the arc. This team, which I think is the worst in the league or one of the worst in the league. And you'd think bringing in a guy like KCP would have helped. KCP hasn't made the impact that we thought he would make. Yeah, it's clear that they need some shooters or something. Like there's a big off season they need to think
mm.
about coming up for Orlando and who they surround these two guys, because they've got their two guys. They just need, and Suggs as well, but they just need a better supporting cast.
Yeah, I think they just need to add a couple of shooters, man. Like we saw what, like in I know I had the Pistons ruled out after we made the calls at the start of the season, but because I just didn't back the shooters enough. But similar, the Magic need to take a similar approach in terms of surrounding the team with some veteran shooters. Like KCP is a decent player, but he hasn't just done enough for this team yet. So possibly next season he might. But these guys do need to go in the off season and go find some decent additions to the team that'll support Paolo and support the 3-point shooting case for the team.
And like in terms of the upcoming schedule, it doesn't get any easier. Like they've got the Rockets, T-Wolves, Cavs, the Rockets again, the Lakers, and in there they've got games against the Pelicans and the Wizards. Uh, yeah, so I think right now the Magic themselves, they're sort of on that bubble of the play-in, so they're gonna need to ramp things up a little bit. But I think yeah, it's been a disappointing campaign for Orlando. No one's dancing around singing the Orlando Magic song these days, which is a shame because it's a great song. I think
Yeah, I mean the
it's pretty
Instagram
fire.
feed has been lacking the Orlando Magic.
We'll have to wait till next season, mate. So we'll see what happens there in Orlando. And another team heading back to the West that we should probably keep an eye on at least. But the Memphis Grizzlies, they just snapped a 4-game losing streak, but they did beat the Dallas Mavericks, who are in dire straits themselves. So I guess, like, of course, Memphis sort of had to come out with a win there. But right now, Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., he's dealing with a bit of an ankle issue. Ja Morant's been playing through a shoulder problem, which is not ideal when you've got the playoffs around the corner. You sort of need him at his best. They've lost a few games. I think it was this week and maybe the week prior. They lost 3 straight games to game winners. And I don't know if you saw those, Rav, but there was the game against the Knicks where OG Anunoby had the game-winning three. The Spurs game where the Aaron Fox hit that mid-range, and then the Hawks one, which is probably the more notable one because Dyson Daniels got the steal off Desmond Bain, passed it up to Karis LeVert, and then LeVert got the layup at the buzzer. And those 3 games were all at home. And if the Grizzlies win those games, then we probably wouldn't be talking about Memphis the way they are now. But yeah, I would be concerned. Like, what's your concern around Memphis at the moment, particularly when you got the teams like the Lakers who are coming up in the Western Conference, and I'm sure there's other teams behind them who are starting to find their form.
I think the biggest thing is health. Like you mentioned, Triple J's out, Jar's battling a shoulder injury, and it's they've got to be conservative in the sense a little bit. Like that they're fourth seed at the moment. It's not like if they lose a few games here and there, they're going to drop all the way down to the 11th seed. So maybe just holding off Jar and slowly progressing Jaren Jackson Jr. just make them ready for the playoffs. Because I think that'll help the team go a long way. They've got guys like Jalen Wells, Scottie Pippen Jr. Who can contribute in positive manners. But unfortunately, the case, yeah, being health, man, that's bottom line. That's it for these guys.
The other thing is defense. They've sort of dropped off in that area as well since the All Star break. The defensive rating has dropped to 28th since the All Star break, which is, I guess, part of it is not being being without Triple J. I think their perimeter defenders like Jalen Wells has been solid this season. I think Scottie Pippen Jr. is losing minutes, but we know that when he's on the floor, he can help out in that area. So they might need to sort of ramp his minutes back up, or at least now would be the time to do it if you're going to rest Ja and give him some time, a little bit of time to recover. And then Vince Williams is still there on the bench as well, who can probably hasn't been at his best, but at his best, he is a top defender for this roster. And also the rebounding, they need to improve in that area as well. Like they're stopping, or they're at least holding opponents to a low shooting percentage, but they're just not collecting the rebounds. So I guess in that case, you look at Zach Edey to sort of step up in that area, or like a Santi Aldama or a Brandon Clark, especially with Triple J out. So a lot of issues for Memphis to figure out there, but it's nice that we're talking about all these teams who are sort of in the middle of the playoff
Mm.
race rather than the teams who are at the top, because I think people forget that there are teams who are jockeying for spots in the playoffs. So the Grizzlies, the Magic, the Bucks, and I mean I guess your Knicks as
Mm.
well. Some teams there who are fighting for playoff
I
spots.
mean, speaking
But in
of,
terms of
sorry, I was just
yeah,
going to jump in there. Speaking of fighting for playoffs, is the Suns Nuggets game. They just needed to get up that game, unfortunately, off the back of Katie's game winner. and Jokic just does Jokic things. So I think they're what, 2.5 games behind the Mavs. So that's another one to look out for, like we mentioned earlier in the episode. But yeah, just want to put that out there as well.
Yeah, and the Suns, I mean, yeah, obviously fighting for a playoff spot. They had that big 20-point comeback against our
Mm,
Clippers, which was tough to watch. Old mate Colin Gillespie, who would have thought he would have been the guy to put the dagger
mm.
in the Clippers that week. But we'll see how the Suns go, and we'll see how teams look or how the playoff picture looks soon enough. In terms of what else has happened around the league, let's talk about the duo over in Boston, Payton Pritchard and Derek White. Insane games from those two. 43 from Payton Pritchard with 10 3-pointers, 41 from Derek White with 9 3-pointers. Insane from those two.
It's unbelievable, bro. Like, what Patriots was about 6'1", 6'2", and had 10 rebounds as well. Um, and we know he's good for like a burst of scoring. But just the fact Derek White of all people went off as well. Um, I guess JB and JT having a bit of a slump over the last, like they haven't really done anything spectacular that stands out. I guess since the All-Star break. But yeah, just with these two guys just being the first teammates, or first duos in Celtics history to have 240 bombs, which, given the Celtics history, you'd think, or recent history, you'd think someone like Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum were the ones to be the first on that place.
Well, maybe Pritchard and White are the duo in Boston now. They've taken over that mantle. Sorry, Jason and Jalen. Um, yeah, it's Pritchard and White now.
Mm.
They're the two guys. They're the duo in Boston. But anyway, heading over to LA, LeBron, another historic milestone, 50K points. First player in NBA history to reach that mark across the regular season and the playoffs. Made a three during the first quarter of the Lakers Pelicans game, and was assisted by Luka. So that's a great bit of trivia there. That Luka was the one who was able to help LeBron get over that mark. But I guess, sorry, enough about LeBron, but I guess in that Lakers Pelicans game, did you catch the Zion poster?
Oh, no, I don't think I did.
Oh, mate, Zion over Trey Jameson, I
Yeah.
believe, dunk of the year contender. Like, we talked about Zion
Mm,
being light at his lightest weight. Yeah, clearly he's at his lightest weight. Like the way he just jumped up and jammed, and LeBron's in the background too, so he had a little bit of a
mm.
you know, um, sort of reaction to that. But anyway,
I'll have to get
LeBron,
onto that.
great,
Yeah.
yeah. But LeBron, great moment for him.
Mm.
And
Yeah, man.
then I
I
think you
think
saw,
it was Zion, right? Someone. Which game was it? One of the games Zion was complaining, or not complaining to, like just yelling at his teammates that these guys can't guard him. And valid point, like, he looks like big, even though he looks lean. Rather, that's probably the best way to put it. And it just looks shifty, and yeah, yeah, it's just gonna be a nightmare if he can stay healthy.
yeah, definitely a warning shot to the league, at
Mm.
least for next season. And anything else sort of caught your eye this week before we move on to the quickfire, Rav?
I was just gonna say, like, shout out to LeBron just being a good dad. Like standing up for his son. He had that little confrontation against Stephen A. Smith, so that's probably the only thing that stood out.
Nice.
Mm,
Yeah, I did see that moment as well. I
mm,
mean, of course, you got to stand up for your son, especially if Bronny's found himself. I mean, Bronny didn't ask for this. Like, he just happens to be the son of
mm,
the greatest player of all time. So I think he got some unnecessary attention when he came into the league,
mm.
and people like Stephen A have sort of taken advantage of that and put him under the pump. So shout out to LeBron for standing up there, standing up for him there, and Stephen A. Smith, who I think I've seen this week has been touted as like a future presidential candidate for 2028,
Mm.
which is insane if we get a Trump versus Stephen A. Smith. But let's not lean towards politics. This is not what the
And
podcast is
and
about.
Stephen
It's about
A.
basketball.
Stephen A. got that 5 mil or 5 year 100 mil plus contracts from
Oh,
ESPN as well.
he
So
did
there we
too.
go, man. Just making some good money.
Big, big week for
Mm.
Stephen A. Smith. Well, shout out to him. Yeah, that's pretty much all our um, everything to chat about in terms of the NBA this week. Quick fire. Let's get stuck into it,
Mm.
Rav. You will ask the first question, so
Mm.
I'll count you down. Here we go. Three, two, one.
Eli, how many points will LeBron end up with?
if he goes 1,500 over the next 2 years, I think he plays 2 years, 53K. I reckon. Um, Rav, do you think both Devin Booker and Kevin Durant will leave the Phoenix Suns?
I think just KD. Yeah. Eli, which of the top four seeds will the Knicks get their first win against?
None of them, but I think the best chances against the Celtics. Rav, name a random player who will have a 50-point game in the back end of the season.
Gonna go Benedict Mathurin from the Pacers. Yeah. And yeah, Eli, what's your game of the week?
Thunder Celtics on Thursday. How about you?
I'm going Cavs Bucks on Tuesday, I believe. Just I think that's the only one
Nice.
they need to get over the hump, and the rest of it's smooth sailing for the win streak.
Yeah, that will be a good one,
Hmm.
especially with the way the Bucks are going. Okay, and well, that's time's up. Ralph, thank you so much for joining me on this episode, and thank you guys for tuning in. Follow us on Instagram, Spotify, TikTok, all the social media platforms. And until then, we got next and Matiwa.